are affecting the overall numbers that come out for the city. So knowing specific areas, and I'm just picking on slum areas because they are high density areas. So that's a factor that should be separated from the rest of the city so that you can manage that information more accurately. Knowing location of visitors and migrant populations based on factors that lead to movement, that's another indicator. An activity about shutting borders outside visitors have worked for some nations, for example, New Zealand, as well as shutting interior borders, and that's been Australia. So boundaries are geospatial. Knowing where those boundaries are is critical. Transportation routes intersecting those borders is geospatial data integration. So those factors are important. And then the other thing I would say is that you want to have comparisons with other countries just to see where you are in relation to your neighbors and the rest of the world. If you look at South Korea, they have a 0.02% infection rate against, in the United States, a 25% infection rate. So when you have out of control rates like the US, you have to ask the question, what's not working and what's needed to turn this around, or what's needed to make it better? In other words, to get better control. So knowing the locations of vulnerable populations is critical. Types and locations of businesses that close their doors is important. Hospitals and healthcare facilities relative to the density of likely patients of the virus. Locations of testing centers and distribution centers for necessities like food and water. Locations of institutions like schools that are compliant with virus prevention measures will show where efforts are needed for improvements. And knowing where messaging of instructions and guidance has reached populations so that communication deserts can be identified for alternative communication options is important. And these statistics may be available from agencies responsible for communications within a country. So I'll stop there in case we're running out of time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim, for your response. I don't have any more questions. Macarena, over to you if you want to open the floor for questions or whatever.
Okay, so thank you, Tim and Rolando, for your presentations. And we have some questions. Please, if you have any questions, send it to the chat to see and make a final report about that. We have a first comment related with some abstract of the presentation of Tim. I'm going to check with ECLAC. I think that is going to be shared maybe at the website, but I have to check on that. And the first question for Tim is related to where do you see the main challenges in the developing countries to implement the GSGF? That is the first question for Tim.
Well, thanks, Macarena. I think the one thing that is most troubling is the need for common geographies. Especially, so if you think about within a country, you need to be at the lowest level of geography possible. And if you're thinking about the regional impact, you need to have common geographies that you can compare across borders. And so I see that as a real challenge. If you look globally, there is no common geography below the nation. It just doesn't exist. We have second order administrative levels, but they're not equal across the world. And there's certainly nothing at a low level of geography. So I think this is where we need to look at things like enumeration districts as one example and grid cells as another example. And it's possible that we really need to use both in combination with each other for different aspects of the statistical information. That's one thing that I think is absolutely needed. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. I have another question related with the GSGF, and it's related how can the IGIF to be implemented related with the GSGF at country levels?
So the IGIF, the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, that's really the next rendition of what we all know of as NSDI, and it goes far beyond that. So that's really providing a much more robust framework for all countries to work within, and that helps in terms of sustainability as we go forward. The Global Statistical Geospatial Framework makes the integration of the IGIF possible. And I don't think most people understand with IGIF what it means to be integrated. And this is where the GSGF, the Global Statistical Geospatial Framework, needs to help them answer that question. And there's more work that's needed to be done in order to make that happen. But I don't think most people understand what it means to have an integrated geospatial information framework, because it's not only about when a boundary aligns with or has a relationship with a street road. It's about the statistics. It's about really what adds the value to all of that geography and all of that geospatial information. So the statistical information, as one example, and there are other data types as well, that's the challenge for us. And I think this is going to be an area of work that we really need to focus in on. And I think use cases and good examples and good success stories and difficult to into some challenges, I think that's where we're going to learn how to make this work best. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tim. In related with the first question about the report of the meeting, on the chart there's a website where you can find the information, and it's going to be in Spanish too. Going to the next question is related to what will be the recommendations to maintain a cartographic update for a statistical purpose of the enumeration areas and the collection of census data, considering the conditions of the COVID-19 pandemic and preventive policies. I think maybe you already answered that, but in some way.
I really like that question because it gives me an opportunity to encourage countries to try to follow something that we've done in the United States with what we call our American Community Survey. If you have a census that is every 5 years or every 10 years, there's a lot of time in between in which you don't have current data. And society changes, the economy changes, the environment changes at a much faster rate than we can really show data for at that time. And so with this American Community Survey, which is a sample survey, it collects data every year from a large number of people within the country, a percent, but it's still a large number of people within the country. And that provides us with annual updates to very critical data. Ultimately, in really the SDGs and other efforts, we have to have more current data and more frequently collected data. And then the same applies to the geospatial side. If you don't have boundaries up to date, so for example, in the United States, we conduct what we call an annual boundary and annexation survey. We go out to 40,000 governments and we ask them for whatever boundary changes they have, and they report them back and give us the information. That keeps our boundary network up to date. And it's so critical to be able to have these government programs that have up-to-date information. So this is beyond the scope of what we've been talking about, but I think that using the example of the American Community Survey and having a every year or every other year survey within a country to collect basic statistical information is so critical. And by you can add questions that reflect what's happening currently. So for example, with COVID-19, the US Census Bureau put out what they called a pulse survey. It's the only good data you're learning about vulnerable populations and the impact to the economy at a business level. There's no other data source that can do that on a national scale. And so that information is absolutely critical. And it's up to us to be sure that we have the statistical information there and the geospatial network to be able to use that information in a meaningful way. So that's absolutely critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for that answer. So we have no more questions, and I want to give the floor to Rolando first to have some closing remarks.
More than closing remarks, I would like to hear from Tim. What about your perspective in terms of this new process of the Sustainable Development Goals and the participation of the geospatial side in the interagency expert group of the geospatial information and the visualization of some of the indicators that we as geospatial colleagues can support to the countries.
Thank you, Rolando. I would say that, and you know this as well as I do, that had a struggle in terms of trying to zero in or focus in on topics that are very important for attaining and maintaining the Sustainable Development Goal information. And it's because it's difficult. It's not easy to do. So it's a difficult task. And I think one of the things that they've been able to do recently that has been highly successful is that they're using technologies like story maps, for example, to tell the story of the data. So, I mean, I'm with the International Cartographic Association. That's all about visualizing data. It's all about mapping. You can't talk about geography and statistics and really understand anything about that unless you put it in some type of visualization. So as we go forward with groups like the expert group on sustainable development goals, if they keep focused on these use cases, on the relationship between statistics and geography and geospatial information, that to me is the path forward for showing the value of the data, the need for the data, and the importance of using that information to make important decisions at a national level. Thanks.
Thank you. I just to close from my side, Macarena, I just want to thank all our colleagues for participating in this important side event. I think it's having more than 100 participants during the side event shows the importance that the geospatial information has in the statistical side and the collaboration, the strong collaboration that we are that they are having. And in ECLAC, this is very important for us, and we are going to continue with and pushing for this collaboration between the statistics and the geospatial information. With this, I want to thank you, thank my colleague Tim Traynor, and over to you, Macarena.
Okay, so I just want to thank to the presenters and all the participants of the meeting. I think we are in, like Tim said, we are in a critical time that we need a lot of data, but we have to be sure of the data that we're using. I think maybe the COVID-19 pandemic show us all the information that we need to make decisions. So we are in a very critical point. Related with the first question, the information of this meeting is going to be available on the ECLAC website. a little abstract of the team presentation. I just want to say thank you very much for participating and take care. Alvaro, I don't know if you want to say some words at the end.
No, thank you very all the colleagues that joined the session today, and it is officially closed.
Okay, thank you very much to all and take care. Happy to see you. And we see you soon.
Gracias, saludos.
Gracias a
Muy bien,
todos.
thank you, Sid. Bye-bye.
Gracias.
Bye.
Hasta luego.
Saludos.
Gracias. Hasta luego.
Gracias.
El ruido era las entradas y las salidas.
¿Sí?
Sí, ese era.
Oye, me alegro verte, Horacio.
Igualmente, me encanta. Ya nos estaremos encontrando.
Nunca se sabe. Con esta pandemia ya no se sabe.